But we can't leave it up to a dysfunctional police department with big egos. And that's what we were dealing with, 28 years ago. Yeah. And they wouldn't accept help. And that's been my only criticism of them for years.
I believe it can be solved if the police accept help from outside their system. That's been the flaw for 25 years. To my knowledge, they have not worked with federal agencies. They have not worked with anybody outside of their group. There's lots of help that was offered, qualified help that could have made a difference early on, within days, and it was refused.
I've been looking for the audio of this quote from John Ramsey. We were told the FBI would be on its way. They never came. That's kind of the gist of what those various audio segments are angling at. The FBI, we were told they'd be on their way and they never came. But I guess this quote from their book will have to suffice. I watched Patsy kneel down and curl up in a corner behind the china cabinet like a terrified child. She seems to be praying or muttering to herself. A person comes up and he says he's Detective Mason. I assume he's with the FBI. Finally, the police will get help, I think. Later, I learned that Mason is another Boulder PD detective and that police, in fact, have kept the FBI at bay, not letting them in the house. From their own narrative, from the Ramsey narrative, it's easy to assume, firstly, that the FBI were blocked from the Ramsey investigation, and secondly, that the FBI never even entered the crime scene.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. So let me ask you, true or false, did the FBI ever enter the crime scene? Now remember that quote from John Ramsey where he says, we were told the FBI would be on its way. They never came. Is that true? What is true? While FBI agent Ron Walker appears at 1550 in episode 1 of the Netflix series, what they conveniently forget to mention is that Walker himself, right, an FBI agent, stepped into the Ramsey home on day 1. Anyone have any idea when exactly that was? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, can I make an appeal? I'm putting up a series on, it's called A History Lesson. Maybe that sounds boring to you. I'm not quite sure I can flower it up to make it more appealing to listen to, but it's a really interesting segment and it is going to require an attention span, which is why I've chopped it up into 10-minute episodes, and we're probably going to end up with maybe 8 or 10 episodes, and then from there we're going to deal with something really interesting and exciting, but we can't get to that if you guys don't watch it. Of course, if you don't watch it, then we're not going to get to the next step of this Ramsey analysis, and I'll probably then abandon it and we'll just carry on with other cases. So the ball is really in your court. So once again, I'm just asking you guys to watch the A History Lesson mini-series, and I can assure you those people who did watch it on members only appreciated it. If you are a member who did watch it, please let the folks know, the subscribers, that it is worth paying attention to. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please hit the thanks button and let's get started. So you've heard in the beginning John saying, wow, they didn't ask for any outside help, and this has been his criticism for so many years. Did you know that just 15 minutes after the detective on scene, Linda Arndt, paged Boulder PD, the FBI's Ron Walker entered the Ramsey's living room? It's 15 minutes later. He was with Boulder PD's Larry Mason. The FBI agent and the cop saw JONBENET lying at the foot of the Christmas tree. Then the FBI agent headed downstairs to the wine cellar, and there on the floor they saw the white blanket, saw the duct tape, and saw a pink Barbie nightgown. Now, I do think we need to deal with Ron Walker as a sort of peripheral character on his own, and we will do that in due course. But do you see, the FBI were involved in the case from the get-go. Ron Walker actually said during the kidnapping phase, this note's bogus. What you're going to find is a dead body. And this was before they actually found the dead body. And guess what? That is exactly what they found. Now, I wonder if John Ramsey would have appreciated an FBI agent coming in there and saying, you know what, this ransom note is bogus. How would Patsy have felt if the FBI agent came into the house and said, you know what, we're not going to pay attention to this 3-page note?
One of the FBI agents in the room, I remember him saying, you always have to look at the family.
Well, actually, I was off that day. The phone rang, and it was one of the individuals from our field office, not an agent, but one of the investigative clerks, just calling to notify me that there had been a kidnapping reported in Boulder. All of this really, I mean, in aggregate, sort of indicated to me that the note was essentially bogus. It was not truly a kidnapping note.
So you see, the FBI were involved in the case from the get-go, and on the scene within half an hour of John finding JONBENET's body, you could even say perhaps 15 minutes, even though John seems to imply in their book that the FBI weren't there. Something else hinky that happened while Mason and Walker were on scene was that Mason decided to move John Ramsey and their friends to a Holiday Inn, the one at 28th and Baseline. Mason wanted everyone in separate rooms, and he was already angling to interview each witness independently. Meanwhile, perhaps while Mason was trying to arrange for this hotel stay, another detective apparently overheard John Ramsey talking on the phone to his private pilot. I believe this was on the day after Christmas, December 26th, before 2 p.m. In other words, less than an hour after John had found his daughter dead in the basement wine cellar. John, and this is according to Lawrence Schiller's narrative in Perfect Murder, Perfect Town, was overheard making plans to fly somewhere before nightfall. John never seems to be asked this by any of the journalists that he gives interviews to. Obviously, it's possible the detective misheard, but apparently after one detective overheard this, right, John, again, according to Schiller's research, told another detective that he and Patsy and Burke would be flying to Atlanta that evening. John said, and this is according to Schiller, that he had something really important to attend to. Mason apparently told John he couldn't leave, and he would later describe John's demeanor in this moment, certainly the way he read it, as callous, but he was worried that he was perhaps projecting. Remember, Arndt also seemed to be unnerved by John, describing him as cordial, amongst other things. Now, whether it's cordial or callous, the detective said he tried to withhold an opinion. Mason sort of felt uncomfortable with what he was feeling based on what he was seeing, and so he tried to sort of second-guess himself. And then something interesting happened, and I think this was the moment the case swung in the Ramseys' favor. Mason withholding his opinion right there, like second-guessing himself, it opened a psychological crack in the door. And then, right then, that's where John asserted himself. He told Mason he wasn't going to the Holiday Inn, and he wasn't defensive or adversarial. As Schiller puts it, he was just stoic. John he didn't ask, he told Mason, give us a day because we've just lost our child. And Mason, sympathetic, figuring the Ramseys weren't going anywhere, conceded. I think one can argue this was not only a critical moment, but the critical moment in this case. Because by hesitating right here, by being lenient here, the Ramseys took the initiative. This was a cue, and arguably the cops lost it in this moment. And of course, we know what happened from this point onwards. The cops lost not only their initiative, they lost their opportunity to talk to the Ramseys, to sequester them. But when they finally did get the opportunity to do so, not 1 day later, but 4 months later, by then the Ramseys had battened down the hatches. They had a big legal team around them, lawyers, investigators, even a spin doctor, and a district attorney that by this time seemed to be quivering in his boots at the prospect of taking this formidable force into a courtroom. He certainly had the echoes of the O.J. Simpson case sort of going on, ringing in his ears in a way. There's one more quote I want to mention. It's where John Ramsey says to Nate Eaton, this is something he did just days, maybe weeks ago, where he said, in the Moscow, Idaho case, you had 40 FBI agents on scene.
I look at this Moscow, Idaho case where 3 students were murdered. And
4 students.
4, was it 4? Yeah.
4, yeah.
He got help from everybody he could get his hands on. He had 40 FBI agents on site.
Does John expect there to be 40 FBI agents whenever there's a murder? 40 FBI agents, what are they supposed to do? Are all 40 supposed to go through the house, 5 in each room? I mean, there are crimes going on all the time. They just aren't America just doesn't have those sort of resources to send 40 FBI agents for every single murder. I would like to hear in the comments how many FBI agents you think is the right number for a particular case. I'm not going to take it further than that. In the next analysis, I want to deal with a mystery that many have completely forgotten about, the duct tape. So look out for that. Also, for those listening right to the end of this video, quite a surprise announcement. I'm going to be talking to you about something we never deal with on this channel, the murder of Vincent van Gogh. We'll be talking about that a little bit later today. So also look out for that. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.